Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the San Rafael Board of Education Governing Board Trustee Area 1 Candidate Forum, live streamed to our audience on YouTube. I am Matt Winton, and I'm a teacher at San Rafael High School. I'm also the Political Action Chair for our local union, the San Rafael Federation of Teachers. I would like to thank the League of Women Voters of Marin County for hosting and moderating tonight's event. I would also like to acknowledge our community outreach partners. In addition to the San Rafael Federation of Teachers, we would like to recognize the San Rafael Teachers Association, the California School Employees Association, and Marin Promise. This year, the League of Women Voters has been celebrating 100 years of following a mission to empower voters and defend democracy. Moderating candidate forums is an important part of their vision of a democracy where every citizen has the desire, the right, the knowledge, and the confidence to participate. The League is a strictly nonpartisan organization and never supports or opposes individual candidates or political parties. We encourage our audience to submit their questions to srcs@marinlwv.org. And now I hand you over to our moderator, League member Susan Stomp.
Thank you, Matt. I'm Susan Stomp. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Marin County and your moderator for tonight's forum. The Community Media Center of Marin is off screen and providing much needed technical support. Thank you for joining us tonight for this forum. We're featuring the candidates for the San Rafael Board of Education governing board members for Trustee Area 1. Thank you to the San Rafael City Schools for inviting us to host this event, and we're honored to be here. As Matt said, we are, slide 2, please. We thank our community outreach partners, the San Rafael Federation of Teachers, the San Rafael Teachers Association, CSEA, and Marin Promise. Slide 3. With me are League members Linda Sula as timekeeper, Jill Sampson and Greg Brockbank as question sorters, Nancy Bell and Dee Dee Butorti for technical support. The League of Women Voters is a trusted membership organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. We do not endorse or oppose candidates or political parties. In addition to promoting voter education, League participates in advocacy for issues and may take positions on issues that arise in ballot measures. I would like to remind everyone that the candidates have both agreed to participate under the ground rules for this forum. In order to ensure impartiality, it's the League's policy that candidate forum team members not live in the voting jurisdiction the candidates represent, nor can they be actively involved in a candidate's campaign. Before we get started, there are some details to review that will help you to interact with this session. Tonight's forum is being live streamed on the League's YouTube channel. The viewing public is invited to submit questions to the email address displayed on the screen, srcs@marinlwv.org. Through our partnership with the Community Media Center of Marin, this forum is being recorded and will be posted on our website at www.marinlwv.org. For broader community access, a gavel-to-gavel production will be rebroadcast on the CMCM TV's Channel 30. The days and times will be posted on our League website. Through the partnership with the community, I would like to briefly explain the rules of the timekeeper and the question sorter. To assure everyone stays within the allotted time, you will see a box designated clock on the screen. At the appropriate time, the box will turn yellow, indicating candidates has 30 seconds remaining for the response. When the box turns red, the candidate should complete the sentence they are on. You may submit your questions to the email address, which was supposed to be on the screen. It's srcs@marinlwv.org. And you can send those questions in anytime during the forum. The question sorters are on standby to review the incoming questions. I want to assure you that the question sorters do not censure the questions, but rather they screen the questions to avoid duplication and to remove anything that's inappropriate. If you do not recognize your question, it might have been combined with other questions on the same topic. You may submit your questions to the email address at any time. There are 2 candidates running for 1 seat on the San Rafael City Council School Board of Education, Area 1. The candidates with us tonight are Gina Daly and Samantha Ramirez. The candidates have been invited to make a 2-minute opening statement. After that, the candidates will each have 90 seconds to answer each question. To be fair, I will rotate the order in which they respond to the questions. For opening statements, we will begin with Gina. Gina, unmute yourself and carry on.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gina Daly, and I'm running for San Rafael School Board because we're living in an unprecedented time. The pandemic has laid bare the inequities that already existed in our society, and we need strong leaders that have the experience and the skills to help us navigate this difficult time. I have deep ties to the San Rafael community. My husband, Kieran, grew up here and graduated from Terra Linda High. My in-laws still live in his childhood home, and we just convinced my mom to move here. So she is living in the Santa Margarita neighborhood to be closer to me and her grandkids. I have almost 20 years of public service experience. I spent most of my 20s working for Senator Dianne Feinstein, both in DC and in San Francisco. I left briefly to get my master's in public policy from UC Berkeley, focusing on K-12 education policy. After that, I worked as an education program evaluator, and my clients were after-school programs at school districts. It was my job to make sure that the programs and the interventions that they were doing were actually improving student outcomes. And those are the skills I'm hoping to bring to the school board. Most importantly, I'm the mom of 2 young kids, and I want to make sure that every kid in the San Rafael City Schools has the chance to thrive. I understand intimately the choices that are being faced by parents because I'm facing the same choices. And I will lead, more than anything, I want to lead with empathy and equity at the center of everything that I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. Samantha, unmute yourself and carry on.
Hello, hola. My name is Samantha Ramirez, pronoun she, her, ella. I am a proud alumni of this district. I'm the product of amazing educators. I graduated from San Rafael High in 2007. I am the daughter of immigrants from Central America and a first-generation college graduate. I have experience working in local organizations like Huckleberry Youth Programs, Canal Alliance. I was also the coordinator of the after-school program LEAP at Venetia Valley. I also facilitated a newcomer program at Davidson for 2 years. My current role is coordinator of the Marin County Youth Commission. I love my students and families. I am actively working in this community. I have the support of youth. I have experience creating successful partnerships with local youth, families, and communities. Right now, in 2020, it's clear. Representation matters. We need people that reflect the diversity of our district. I am bilingual and bicultural, like over half of our students. I can serve as a bridge between cultures, languages, generations, and experiences across our district. I'm from San Rafael for San Rafael's future. It's an honor to be here with you today. I believe all students benefit when all students are thriving. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. The questions will start now, and Samantha, you get to answer the first question first. The question is, during the pandemic, how do you balance the needs of students to be in class with the needs of everyone else, the students, the staff, and the families, to remain safe? Would you reopen as soon as the law and local guidelines allow, or would you be more conservative? Unmute yourself, thank you, Samantha.
Hi. Thank you. So I think that the safety and the healthy of our students and our families and community is number one. I don't believe in opening before it's safe to open. I think it's really important that everybody feels safe, and we cannot play around with people's life. There's no need to rush back into school. We don't need to lose not even one person in our district. I also think that the first part of your question was about students learning. I'm currently facilitating programs with youth right now, and it has been very challenging. And so I think that making sure that we truly model positive mental health and how to take care of yourself, and just allowing safe spaces for our students, for our parents, for our teachers. We are all going through so much right now, so I think that it's really important to, lead in a holistic way. We can catch up on things that we miss, but we cannot catch up on feeling horrible and, getting depressed and things like that. And so I think we need to come together and take care of ourselves, do stretching, do a lot of other techniques in our Zoom classes to make sure that that we are taking care of our mental health. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Gina?
Well, this is a really important question. It's actually one of the main reasons why I decided to run for office, because this pandemic it's unprecedented. We don't have all the answers about what is safe, what the research tells us. We're learning more every single day. And so I actually read the 2 MOUs that the teachers unions have with San Rafael City Schools about what the reopening would look like. And the thing that really struck me is that a lot of the protocols they have in place, the cohort size, the disinfectant, the questionnaires that are required before anyone returns to school, they're very similar to the childcare guidelines that my kids are operating under right now. My kids returned to childcare in early July, and I talked to their pediatrician about the guidelines, and he said, nothing is 0% risk. That's not our life right now, but that he felt confident that they were doing everything they could. And so I think the most important thing, it's not really a question of should we reopen or not reopen. It's how can we provide flexibility for families, for students, and also for teachers to be able, for those that feel ready to go back or want to go back, is there a safe way to do that? For those that don't feel like that is possible, how can we make the virtual learning as good as possible? And that includes making sure that kids with learning differences, kids that are having issues with digital divide, that they are prioritized, even if they're in a virtual environment, for being in a place where they have access to the internet. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. You get to answer the next question first. And the question is, prioritize the specific issues you want to tackle in your 4-year term on the board. Do you have a special area of interest that you would like to incorporate into your work as a school board member?
Well, I think the most important thing, first priority, is the pandemic and all of the issues that come from it. The potential learning loss, safety, making sure that we're being guided by science, not by politics in terms of reopening. And then I think because of that, we also have to look at what is the financial picture of the school district and really our state and country at that point. My job right now is I'm a federal lobbyist. It's my job to bring in resources to UC Berkeley. And I want to be in a place where I can help the school district think creatively about how to bring in additional resources, even in a difficult period. So that's number one. The second thing I want to focus on is equity and access for every student. There's a lot that can be done. There was just an Education Trust West equity audit that had a lot of great ideas about how to try to help the achievement gap. One thing that I think would be really critical is aligning the graduation requirements for San Rafael high schools with the A through G requirements that you need to go to Cal State University and UC. That's a critical pathway. And even if a student decides they want to go to community college or join a trade, they should be given the option to have the A through G classes. The next thing I really want to focus on is making sure that we have the best possible teachers. Now that means paying them a fair wage, making sure we retain our excellent teachers, and hiring diverse teachers. In order to do that successfully, we need to do diversity cluster hires. And there it is.
Thank you. Thank you, Samantha.
Yeah, I would have to say, I think equity, because equity affects everything else that's going on in our school districts, in our communities, and in our lives. I think that the most important thing is that the people most affected by these inequalities are the people leading the work. So I think really involving young people, involving the Latinx and minority community. I think that I would prioritize early childhood education and making sure that our communities have access to that early education, because it dictates like how the learning is going to go for the rest of the young person. I think we need more enrichment. That's a huge part of equity. How can we have more arts and creative outlets? I think that the school food is a huge issue, because our low income students depend on that food. And from working on the school campuses, it literally is making them sick. And then I think from an emotional perspective, our students are hurting. There's these BIPOC pages that have come up on Instagram that are showing the situations of racism in our schools and how it's affecting them. I think that we need to have youth centers, and we need to have more opportunities for young people to be mentored. I definitely think that we need more teachers of color. I know from being friends with teachers that when you're a first generation teacher of color, the tests and all the things to become a teacher can be challenging. So how are we supporting teachers of color to do that and having affordable housing? I think we need access to intellectual knowledge as low income people of color to bridge the opportunity gap. It's not about achievement, it's about what opportunities are we being given.
Thank you, Samantha. And now you get to answer the next question first. How can we better bring our diverse communities together, starting in the elementary schools? Students and families tend to be very separated geographically and socially, and that division lasts through high school. Do you have any ideas for addressing that divide in our community?
This is a really great question. Yes, I have experience being the director of an after-school program for about 4 years, and I saw myself as a mini principal. How do I take ownership of these young people and their families and really wrap around and support them? So I definitely think that we do need to do work around diversity, but we also need to do work around developing the power and the self-determination of the communities that don't have that, you know? So I think that there's opportunities where we can overlap and work together safely, but we also need to have serious conversations about race and equity, because I think that there's an opportunity to have more affluent families and families from different walks of life share that knowledge with other families that don't have it. And that would be an amazing opportunity to bring our communities together, because that's how we're best going to get out of this inequality and this opportunity gap, is to really take from the people that have a lot and redistribute it and share it. And how can we do that in a personable, community-oriented way? I think that our schools can model that. I think that we should be opening our schools on the weekends. When I was little, we used to go to Pickleweed Park, and there was like a sewing room and different activities, and parents would be getting trainings. We really need to provide severe wraparound services by people from the community that look like the minority students and our BIPOC students, so that we can all be inspired and start thriving together. Thank you.
Thank you, Samantha. Gina?
Yeah, well, I think there's actually an interesting current example that's going on that might be a good model for San Rafael City Schools. So the formerly known as Sir Francis Drake High School, they're actually undergoing a process right now with over 100 participants where they're having conversations, difficult conversations about race and class and systemic racism. And it's sort of radical talking. It's actually something that's been used in other communities as well. I wonder if that wouldn't be a good way for us to bring everyone together and try to have a similar baseline from which we can build more community. So that's just one example. And I think the fact that someone in our county is undergoing that process right now is a very positive step. So that's the first thing. I think we also need to focus on after school programs and community events. Unfortunately, a lot of our schools are not racially diverse. They are kind of segregated. And so I think if we just focus on a single school, we might not get to that the diverse and intermixing that people would like. And so maybe we need to think about, how do we have district-wide events, school events where everyone can participate, and really try to foster that community. Do things over food. I mean, food is the bridge for so many things. I'm Italian. I communicate through food. That's just how I am. And I know there's a lot of other cultures that are the same way. So I think there's a lot of opportunity, and I love that people in our community are already thinking about these issues.
Thank you. So then the next question is one that has come in from the audience, and Gina, you will be answering it first. Do you support bilingual classes in the elementary schools? Why or why not? And how will you address the segregation in our elementary schools?
I 100% support bilingual education. I think we should be doing more of it. All of our kids will benefit from it. We will be more successful. And frankly, I wish I had the opportunity as a kid to be able to do that. And I hope for my kids that they will have that opportunity to have a bilingual education. So that's, first of all, absolutely 100% yes. Sorry, the second part of the question was about,
how will you address the segregation in our elementary schools?
So I think that the question really, it shouldn't be about segregation. It should be about equal access to resources, because that's the fundamental issue. For what I've heard from talking to a lot of community members, is that some of our campuses actually have wonderful community that are part of those schools that are mostly Latinx. There's wonderful community that comes from that. And so I don't necessarily think you'd want to take that away from people, but you do want to make sure that they have access to the same resources, the same funding, the same after school programs, the same teachers. That's really where we can address equity. So I don't think we want to break up community, but we definitely want to address funding inequities and access to other resources.
Thank you. Samantha?
Hi, yes, I also agree with Gina. I definitely support bilingual education. When I was in elementary school, the Venetia Valley used to be called Galinas, and my mom was one of the parents that fought to keep bilingual education as an option. And so I definitely think that it's important. And it also provides our Latinx community and Spanish-speaking community, with feeling more comfortable in spaces, and allows for more openness. So I think that it would be great to roll out a lot of bilingual classes in a lot of different schools, but we would need more teachers that are bilingual. And so these things are all connected. In terms of the segregation, I think it's super unfair to approach like the schools being segregated without talking about how Marin is segregated. So really the schools represent or reflect the segregation that we see in Marin County. And so until we have more affordable housing, until we have other things in place, then it's going to be really difficult to have more integrated schools. And so I think that it's really important to look at all of the other indicators, I think that there's a benefit from having a lot of students of color together. From working at Venetia Valley, there is a lot of Latinx students, but then there was also white students, minority students. And so I think that there's also something positive about being with a lot of like-minded people, but it's also limiting when that's all that we have access to. So I definitely agree that we need to spread out the resources. So ideally all schools and all children would have access to the same opportunities.
Thank you. And Samantha, you get to answer the next one first, and it's another one from the live audience, and it's related to what you have been talking about. That experience has shown us that school segregation will not provide equity. Do you support San Pedro to remain segregated? And if so, do you believe that San Pedro students will receive the same quality of education as the students in other elementary schools in the district?
Yeah, I definitely don't feel comfortable answering this question. I would want to do a lot more research on what's happening. I think that, like I was saying, I've worked at Venetia Valley, who's similar to San Pedro. I know a lot of students get bused in from the canal to San Pedro, but I think that these are conversations that need to be talked about as a group and as the community. We need to talk to the students. We need to talk to the families. How do you feel about things? How do you want this to happen? Because we can't just start sending our kids to school together and think everything's going to be solved. What measures are we putting in place? How are we going to have this dialogue so that we can be in schools together and it's safe and productive for everyone? Because we have issues right now with some anti-Semitism, racism, ignorance. So we definitely have to address those things before we start thinking about how we're going to move students, because it affects us psychologically, our surroundings and how we are. And it's a societal thing. We cannot continue to blame students and families when Marin County is segregated. You have wealthy, affluent people, and then you have a working class. I was a nanny for many years of my life. So I see that Marin has the best of the best to give, and we have extreme poverty. And so what are we going to do to bridge that? And it's going to take the work of all of us, especially the people affected by it. So it's important to elect people of color and minorities to these roles.
Thank you. Gina?
Well, I think that the important thing, it's interesting that the way the question was posed, because as I was saying in my previous answer, I don't think that, as Samantha said, you have to talk to the community members that are most affected. If people are happy at San Pedro and you can make sure that you're providing equal resources, the best teachers, everything else, I can't see myself being in favor of arbitrarily deciding, we need to change things. You have to have conversations with family members, with students, and find out what's working, what's not working. The one thing about San Pedro in particular that I'm aware of is that, as you mentioned, a lot of students are bused in to go there from the Canal District. That can be a very long bus ride. It can be about an hour each direction from what I understand. And so that is something that I think is worth exploring, is that bus ride in of itself actually an inequity? And that would be the sort of thing I would want to talk to community members about, specifically about San Pedro.
Thank you. So Jeannie, you get to answer the next question first. Do you anticipate budget cuts? And how would you make your decision regarding where to cut?
So I sincerely hope there won't be budget cuts. As I said, I work as a federal lobbyist, and so I'm all too familiar with decisions that are made in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. do impact education. And so I think the most important thing is to try to advocate in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. that these cuts not happen. As of right now, I'm aware that the federal government is not anywhere close to passing another COVID relief bill. And hopefully first quarter of next year they will, but that may not help the current budget situation. In terms of so my job will really be understanding how can we best advocate to have higher budgets? And I have a lot of experience in that. In terms of where the budget cut should be, most of the budget, I think it's 85 to 90% of the budget is actually in staff and salaries. And so there aren't many levers you can pull, but I would want to take a much deeper dive into the budget before I could make any sort of prediction about what should be cut. I will say though that I have a lot of skills to be able to do such a deep dive, and if needed, I will do it and do it in a way that hopefully preserves jobs and puts kids at the center of everything, because it's their educational achievement that should be the number one thing they're thinking about.
Thank you. Samantha.
Yeah, so I definitely think that I would be excited to learn about the budget aspect of this, making that transition from community member to how these decisions decisions are being made, I definitely would not want to make any budget cuts. It's already expensive enough to live here and be here in Marin, so I would not want to support any budget cuts. And I also would always want to make sure that our working people and our people that make our schools run, our classified, our teachers, everybody has such an important role in our schools. So I would definitely not want to see any budget cuts, and would do whatever I can to make sure that we don't affect people in that way, because our livelihood affects our mental well-being, and it's all connected. We cannot show up as our best selves when we don't have what we need to be successful. You know, I've had to work 7 days a week for years, and it burns you out. And thanks to the pandemic, I don't have to do that anymore, but it's still really stressful. I think that this goes back to equity. I think we have to stop taking away from the people that already have a little bit, you know, and so how can we take it from other areas? How are we creating more sustainable systems? I work at a nonprofit, and one of my critiques is that the people on the ground get paid the least, but really we do the most important work. So I think that there's something to be said about schools also. The majority of the people doing the work, how do we become and get more equitable salaries? Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get to the next question, I want to remind the viewers that you can submit your questions to srcs@marinlwv.org. So the next question will be answered by Samantha. The role of the school resource officers has been changing in Marin schools. What's your view of the use of SROs in San Rafael School District?
I support the board's recent decisions to discontinue their partnerships with the SROs. It was clear from student input that they had been hurt by them being there. And so I definitely think that we need to invest in counselors and not cops. I think we need to heal the hurt in our schools and in our community, and having officers on campus, the data shows, does not contribute to students feeling safer on campus. On the contrary, the data is astonishing on how it has disproportionately affected Latinx students. So we have to find solutions about that immediately. What young people right now, middle school, high schoolers, have been caught up in the system, and what can we do to support them? I think this also goes back to equity. You know, we have to address the equity, we have to address the racism, we have to address how all of these factors have been working against, students of color, and really have some honest, brave conversations, because I believe San Rafael and Marin is capable of such amazing things. We literally have the resources if we would be able to allocate them in a different way. So definitely support the SROs being off school campuses, and definitely think that we need to invest in the healing and in the future of how to really envision and create the safe schools that we deserve.
Thank you. Gina.
So I too support the decision that the board made about removing the school resource officers. It was very clear from the public comment that for the two board meetings where they discussed it, that youth and specifically students of color really did not feel safe with SROs on campus. So I think that process actually worked really well, where the board was able to hear a lot of comments on it and was able to make an informed decision as a result. I think that this is actually a larger issue though. It's bigger than SROs. It's actually more about how students of color are being disproportionately affected by expulsions, suspensions, and how we deal with punishment in general on school campuses. My first job, my first client when I was an education program evaluator was Berkeley Unified School District. And it was my job, because they were under court order, to reduce the number of students of color who were being expelled and suspended. It was my job to look at their data, interview them, and make sure they were complying with the court order. So this is an issue that has been ongoing for a long time in many of our schools. And although our numbers are lower this year, I think a lot of that has to do with the pandemic and the fact that students were not on campus. We need to be focusing on restorative justice practices and not arbitrary discipline. I think that it's a larger conversation we need to have. The SROs might be gone, but as Samantha said, the hurt remains, and we still have to deal with the ramifications.
Thank you. Gina, you'll be answering the next question first. What programs would you advocate to address bullying and cyberbullying? Please include education and student inclusion, as well as cyber safety?
Well, this is a very timely question. I was watching the Student Voice Forum earlier today, and unfortunately they had 3 people Zoom bomb them. And it was, there were student leaders that were trying to have an honest conversation about racism and discrimination in their schools, and they were cyberbullied, they were harassed. And so this is something, especially being in a virtual environment, that, that students are dealing with, teachers are dealing with, parents are dealing with. I think the most important thing is that we have a zero tolerance policy for it. There are steps we could take, like making sure everyone has to sign on to a Zoom account to access anything. We can make sure that we have a waiting room function so that you only let people in that you know who they are. There are kind of parameters we can put up, but I think that we have to have a long conversation with people that are cyberbullying. We've seen the effects on students' mental health, on their well-being. We really have to make sure that we have a culture of not accepting that. That just cannot be part of it. Bullying in general, I actually had another client that was, when I was an education evaluator, that had a character building anti-bullying effort. And a lot of what they did is they just normalized that you have to treat people with respect. And they had a lot of activities and curriculum around that. It was character centered, it was human centered. And I think, especially with bullying, we have to make sure that students feel comfortable talking about it.
Thank you. Samantha?
Yeah, it's definitely a really tricky situation. And I do think that we have to have serious conversations around cyberbullying. And I think this also connects to the anti-Semitism, the racism. Like with social media, there's this other layer of harassment that is affecting our schools and our communities. But I also think that it's an opportunity to model restorative practices, to model how we're going to allow for a space for mistakes. Right now, we are in a period of learning and unlearning. I think society also reflects this bullying to our youth and to our communities. So I think we really have to talk about how we're going to heal it in all aspects, because again, our schools are a reflection of society. We have people that are washing off the Breonna Taylor mural night after night in Terra Linda. Okay, so there is also some hate and some issues that we have to address that come out in cyberbullying, but the young people, students, children, we learn from adults, right? And so we also have to work on the family structure and making sure that families are not going to allow their children to engage in cyberbullying. I also think that we need to do more work around Ilakesh. They did that at Venetia Valley. And it's about, you are my other me. The way that I treat you is how I treat myself. If I love and respect you, then I love and respect myself. So really the answer to this is love. We need to heal this through love, education, knowledge, centering Black and Brown voices.
Thank you. Samantha, you're next. What strategies would you employ to maintain and enhance vigorous community engagement?
Can I hear that one more time? What strategies
would you employ to maintain and enhance vigorous community engagement?
Yes, I personally love community engagement and engaging with parents. I think if you want to help young people and students, from my experience, you need to engage the families, right? What's going on at home. And so I definitely think that we need to invest money. We need to invest curriculum. We need to create pathways for our most needy families, our families that need more support. How can we incorporate them in our schools and in our communities? Like, I think that I mentioned earlier, changing the lunches. I feel like we should change the lunches and we should invite moms from the community, dads from the community. Who wants to cook? Let's rent some commercial kitchens. Let's feed our children food that we know is going to make them feel good, because that's how we're going to have better scores and better, statistics around how children feel at school. Is your belly full? Do you know that there's going to be food when you get home? What kind of house are you living in? Do you feel like you would benefit from your own house? house. We have families crammed together. So I think that in terms of community and family engagement, it's about how we're going to address these issues because they're all connected. I believe, as being the daughter of immigrants, my parents had a dream for me to go to college and get an education. That's how a lot of parents are. But there's so many steps and things that we don't know along the way that I think that that's an important part of parent community engagement. Let's get the whole family involved, give everybody the information that they need to live their best lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Gina?
So we're really blessed in San Rafael that there are a lot of wonderful community-based organizations like the Canal Alliance, like Marin Promise. So I think that what I would want to do is utilize as many existing resources and connections that they already have and be able to plug into that. I've done a lot of outreach to those organizations. One thing that really came out in the equity audit that was done is that you have to meet people where they are. People don't always have time because of the jobs they are in to be able to meet at school during school hours. And so you have to go to churches, you have to go to community centers, you have to go to the market, you have to find people where they are and be with them. I also think that we need to make sure that parents are, especially parents in the Latinx community, are engaged in all of our budget decisions and making sure that that is a huge part of community engagement. They should have an absolute say in how the funding is being spent in our schools. And if that means alternating, and also the PTA, so if that means alternating, one meeting is in English with Spanish translation and then the other we flip, if that's the way to be more inclusive, that's what we should be doing. I think there are a lot of strategies we can employ. And I just think, if I'm elected, my goal is to do a lot of listening and not as much talking, and just trying to learn as much as I can so that I can help support people.
Thank you. Jeannie, you'll be answering the next question first. Let's see, we have one from the community. Monies generously donated by PTAs will enhance the student's education. Since there is a vast difference in PTA donations between the schools, would you be opposed to pooling the PTA donations and distributing PTA monies in an equitable way between the San Rafael City schools?
I think that that's a really interesting idea and actually could be a way to address the resource inequity that I was talking about. I think, first of all, it's very important that we have strong PTAs at every single school, regardless of whether they bring in money or not. I think having strong parent connections to schools makes stronger schools. I can see, perhaps having a certain percentage of the money be pooled. But I think that, having some local control over that funding is also important because the parents are raising that money because they want to see it in their school. But we do have to address the inequity and the resources, and a lot of, especially the elementary school level, there is a lot of difference between different schools in terms of how much money their PTAs can raise.
Thank you. Samantha.
Yeah, I definitely think that there would be benefits to having a little more of an equitable solution, but I agree with Gina that that parents contribute a certain way because they think it's going to go to their school. But then I also think that that is what contributes to the inequalities. We're not seeing all our children as all our children. We're seeing this is the school that I want to have more money, and then, or the school that I benefit from. And so I think that there's a lot of overlapping layers, because we also have to talk about how students in SRCS don't always necessarily live around the areas of their schools, right? And so that's also playing into like the property taxes and money. And so I think that there's a lot of tricky dynamics, but in theory, yes, we would want to redistribute the funds so that everybody's getting equal opportunities. But I know that that might be a little easier said than done. But I think that we can work towards really believing that all students benefit when all students thrive. And that means sometimes we have to give a little extra. Sometimes we have to move aside, like Gina's saying, and listen. And what's really happening is that we have not been listening to the people most affected. So a lot of my experience is directly like the students that have grown up here.
Thank you. And then Samantha, you get to answer the next one first. How will you obtain input from faculty, staff, and others in developing policies and making decisions?
I think that that's super important. Having all stakeholders come to the table and creating a variety of different formats to listen to the community. We're all different learners. Some of us are visual learners, some of us are auditory learners. So I think providing different spaces for different people to be able to share their opinions. I think we need to make sure to do it at all hours of the day, to make sure to have a variety of locations and really allow for all input from all stakeholders to create and shape the future. But I definitely think that we need to do more around equity because I graduated in 2007 and so many of the statistics, the patterns and the trends are the same. So I think we really have to incorporate BIPOC students, BIPOC community members and parents to really pioneer this work and tell us what is it that they need to be most successful? Because it's just, we don't have reflective structures like our community. It's over 50%, like over 60% Latinx. But where do we have that representation?
Thank you. The next question, and the viewers, you can still send in a question if you go to, if you send it to online srcs@marinlwv.org.
Susan, sorry to interrupt. I didn't get a chance to answer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's
Yes,
okay.
right. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
Well, the next question will probably be the last one, and if anybody out there wants to submit one, but do you want me to read the question again?
No, I remember it. It's about input from faculty
and staff. Right.
So yeah, actually I have a lot of experience with coalition building, with building support and connection with various stakeholder groups. That has been probably the biggest driver of my entire career. So really what I try to do when I approach any issue is making sure that, first of all, I have an open door policy, that I'm making connections with everyone, that is a key part of that decision making. And then I look for places where we can find agreement. A great example of my past work in that is when I was working for Senator Dianne Feinstein, we needed to update her landmark Lake Tahoe legislation. She tasked me with having stakeholders from the business community, the environmental groups, from literally 12 different local, state, and federal agencies to come to the table. And through that process, it took over a year, and I can't tell you how many drafts of that legislation. But we were actually able to come to consensus and were able to actually enact that bill into law. It's not always a fast process, but I think it's really important that, especially when you're trying to do big things, you have to do that coalition building and that consensus building. And I think fundamentally, the problems are so great right now. We need people who have a track record of getting it done. And that is what I've done my entire career. It's not just enough to have the right policy, you have to know how to get it across the finish line.
Great. Thank you, Gina. And we'll get to the last question here. And what are your thoughts on charter schools? And Gina goes first.
Okay, I was just going to ask. Charter schools. So charter schools are an interesting question. When I was in graduate school, I actually studied different types of school models and interventions. And through that study, I actually found that in almost every single circumstance, charter schools did not improve student outcomes. And in fact, often they robbed the local school from precious funds and overall actually hurt student outcomes. And so, never say never. There might be a very compelling reason to want a charter school, but it would have, the bar would be very, very high, because I still haven't seen any information that makes me think that it would actually be successful for our students. And when I'm putting students first, what I care about is student outcomes. And the data just has not supported that with charter schools.
Thank you. Samantha.
I oppose charter schools. I support public schools. I love public schools. I am the product of the schools of this district. I am the product of the amazing educators that worked in public schools. And so I think that we can start by healing our public schools and therefore affect the larger community. So I oppose charter schools.
Thank you. So this concludes the question portion of the forum. Before the candidates make their closing statements, I'd like to share some key differences between how our elections will work this year, particularly in regards to how and when you can vote. November 3rd is Election Day, and you have until October 19th to register to vote, after which you will have to go to the elections office at the County Civic Center to register and vote in person. Due to COVID-19, the state of California has implemented new, broader voting opportunities in order to promote public safety, provide expanded vote by mail options, as well as in-person voting. So slide 4, okay. Vote by mail ballots will be mailed on October 5th. All active registered voters in Marin County will automatically receive a ballot in the mail. There's no need to request one. You can start voting by mail on October 6th by dropping off your completed ballot at 3 different ways. One is in any one of the 12 secure elections department drop boxes that will be located around the county, or you can take it to the elections office in the county civic center, or you can deposit it in a US post office box. And all of the ballots that are mailed will have our postage paid, so you don't need to pay anything to post them at the US mailbox. To be counted, return ballots must be postmarked no later than November 3rd and received at the elections office no later than November 20th. Please note that Marin County pays postage on all returned ballots. Slide 5. For in-person voting, the polling places will be open for 4 days from October 31st through November 3rd. There will be 29 consolidated polling places. Your ballot will indicate your assigned polling location. You can vote at the elections department in the Civic Center starting October 6th during regular business hours. For more information about Dropbox and polling locations, go to www.marinvotes.org. Thank you. At the end of this forum, there will be a slide listing additional websites we recommend that you check out before for more detailed election about election information. And now the candidates will make a closing statement of 1 minute, and we will go in reverse order of the opening statement and start with Samantha. Samantha, the closing statement.
Thank you so much. It was an amazing honor for me to be in front of you today. As an alumni of this district, so many educators have seen me grow up and have seen my trajectory. I know and I love this community. I love our schools. I've worked at our schools, and this is 2020. I'll say it again, representation matters. Over half of our district is Latinx, but not only that, I will be a bridge between generations, cultures, languages. I have the experience in our schools. I want to thank you for the education that I have, that I was given from this district. I think that together we can do amazing things. And I'm really excited to work with the community. And whether Gina or I win, you will be seeing both of us because we are invested in the future of our schools and in our community. And so it's an honor to go to be an opponent, to have such a strong opponent. But I really hope that you will rally behind me. And I'm from San Rafael for the future of San Rafael. So thank you.
Thank you, Gina.
So like I said, I have very deep ties to San Rafael. Since we moved here 6 years ago and had our family, I've taken every opportunity I can to give back locally. I've been president of the Terra Linda HOA for the past several years. I was appointed by Mayor Phillips to the Wildfire Prevention Committee. I have the endorsements of Mayor Phillips, all of the San Rafael City Council, all of the Miller Creek School Board. And I think that those are really about, they have experience working with me. And if we're going to accomplish big things, we need partners. I hope that you will, as Samantha said, we both care so much about kids. That is something we absolutely have in common. And I just hope that you will give me a chance to be able to be your school board member. I'm a mom and I get what you're going through, and I want to be there to help every single kid. Thank you.
Thank you. This concludes our forum. Thank you to our community outreach partners, Marin Promise, San Rafael Federation of Teachers, San Rafael Teachers Association, and CSEA. Thanks to the candidates for participating and to Linda Sula for timekeeping, Jill Sampson and Greg Brockbank as question sorters, Nancy Bell and Dee Dee Butori for their technical support. And special thanks to the team at CMCM TV. We could not have done this without them. A video of tonight's forum will be posted on the League's website in the next few days. Slide 6, please. For more information about the election, the candidates, and ballot measures, visit the League's website at www.marinlwv.org and click on the Voter's Edge, and you will find additional information and recommended websites. Thank you again for joining us tonight, and most importantly, for voting.